Duck was most upset. Diesel had been telling lies which had sent Duck to Edward's station. "Don't worry," comforted Edward. "You have nothing to worry about here." Duck felt happier with Edward. He spent the day tidying his yard until it was all Swindon fashion. "You've done lovely work," smiled Edward the next morning. "Would you like a run down the line?" "Oh, yes, please," smiled Duck. So it was arranged for Duck to take some trucks to the harbour. "Watch out for the twins," called Edward. "They're prone to mischief." Duck reached the harbour in good time, where he found a little engine waiting. "Hello," he said. "I'm Duck."
What a funny name,"
laughed the engine.
"I'm Bill. Shall I take your trucks, Duck?"
he added loudly. "Yes, please," smiled Duck. "Is my return train ready?"
"Almost," replied Bill. "Once I've sorted these, I can finish with the others."
Duck was surprised. "Would you like some help?"
"Oh no, I'll manage," replied Bill as he scampered off. "You get used to working alone, you know."
Duck was impressed, but the trucks were hardly out of sight when...
"Hello again!"
Duck jumped and was about to let out a cry when he suddenly noticed something.
"Why, hello, Ben. It's nice to meet you."
"I'll just, Ben was at a loss for words. He had been hoping Duck would mistake him for Bill, but Duck had seen through the ruse. "What lovely nameplates you have," he cooed smugly. "Was there something the matter, Ben?"
"No, I'll get the trucks for you now."
And Ben hurried away. So much for their little game, Duck thought. He began to feel cocky, especially as Ben brought his trucks without fuss. "Here you are," he murmured quietly. "Thank you, Ben," replied Duck with emphasis. "I hope I haven't spoiled any fun," he added loftily.
"Oh, not at all," said Ben, as a cheeky grin broke out across his face.
Suddenly, Bill appeared and shunted several trucks in front of Duck.
"It'll take a lot more than that to out-quack us,"
roared the twins with glee. In what seemed like an instant, the twins were gone, leaving behind a rather bemused Duck, surrounded by trucks. Edward was most apologetic.
"I told them to behave,"
he sighed. "Never mind," smiled Duck wryly. "It's only harmless fun after all. In fact, it makes a nice change to be the victim of simple fun. Though I do hope you don't let them know that." Donald or Douglas would often bring trains of ballast to the big station. There, another engine would take the trucks on. The job was often left to James, who hated it.
"It's not fair," he would grumble. "Why do I have to work with trucks all day? A splendid engine like me deserves something grander."
"You're not the only one who does," mused Donald. "Though you're the only one who complains," he added quietly. James, who was too busy grumbling to hear, snorted away. Donald didn't mind what work he did, and he well knew how opposed to goods work James was. "I sometimes wish he'd get to Bullcoach's tea," he confessed. "Then at least I'd get some peace." The Caledonian had no idea things were about to change. One morning, days later, Donald arrived with his trucks as usual. As he puffed aside for James, the station master came hurrying over. "You won't be going back down the branch line," he told Donald. "Henry was supposed to take a special, but he's not well. We need you to take it for him."
James was furious. "What? Donald pull a special? It's not fair!
Aye, cut in Donald. Beg pardon, sir, but why not let James pull it? I can take these trucks in his place. James was surprised.
Really?
Ach, aye, I didn't mind what I did, replied Donald. James was delighted, especially when the station master agreed. The red engine swanned away to be readied, as Donald was recoupled to the trucks. He took them all the way to Edward's yard, where he saw Boko. "Hello," he said. "I thought James would bring these." "Been a wee change of plans," said Donald, and he explained about the special. Boko was surprised. "That's most charitable of you, Donald." "Aye, but I only did it so he'd stop grumbling about trucks all day," winked Donald. Though he could have at least said thank you to me. Boko was about to reply when the engines heard a whistle. It was James, but he didn't look happy. He came snorting through with the special, which was a long line of filthy coal trucks. Donald and Boko goggled in surprise before they both roared with delight. "That grand enough for you, James?" Donald laughed. James's reply was, perhaps fortunately, drowned by the sound of cackling laughter. The mountain railway had acquired 3 new engines. Alaric and Eric were well behaved and hard workers, but Lord Harry was quite another story. He was cocksure, arrogant, and rude. He always seemed to be taking risks. "You must go carefully," warned Wilfred.
"Pooh," sniffed Lord Harry. "I can manage, thank you. Why don't you keep your chimney out of other engines' business?"
Wilfred remained unimpressed, as did Ernest. What could settle him, they wondered. At last they settled on Catherine. "Could you try and keep Harry in check until Culdee comes home?" they asked.
"I'll try,"
said Catherine grimly. But she quickly found out it was easier said than done.
"Slow down!" Catherine shrieked. "We're going far too quickly." "I always travel at this speed," laughed Lord Harry.
At last, Catherine had had enough.
"You'll have an accident one day if you keep puffing around everywhere in a mad dash."
"She's right," called Wilfred. "You're the only engine who hurries for a reason." Lord Harry puffed indignantly.
"This is just some jealous conspiracy," he hissed at Wilfred. "You're not superheated, and you feel threatened by my superior performance."
To make himself quite clear, Lord Harry stormed away, Catherine wailing in front. The journey up the mountain was much the same, until at last they reached the summit.
"We're right on time," snorted Lord Harry. "That'll show that old fusspot."
Poor Catherine hadn't the energy to reply. She wanted to enjoy the rest of the top, but in what felt too short a time, they were heading back. When they returned to the bottom station, they were sufficiently ahead of schedule. Lord Harry simmered in a conceited swagger as the passengers disembarked. But before he could leave the station, Wilfred came shuffling in with the truck. Two irate passengers climbed out and pointed angrily at Lord Harry.
"You stupid engine! Fancy leaving us behind. Lord Harry squirmed uncomfortably as they were ushered away. So much for rushing about, said Catherine dryly. I suppose this is another one of those conspiracies of yours? Wilfred added sweetly. Lord Harry said nothing. In fact, he remained in a seething silence for the rest of the evening. Edward was working hard, pushing and pulling trucks and coaches around the yard. He had just tidied away a line of trucks when an unfamiliar little green engine came puffing into the yard. The fat controller was on board. Edward, he called, here's Percy. Will you show her everything? Certainly, sir, smiled Edward. He was excited, as was little Percy. Do come along, he said warmly. I must arrange some trucks for James, but I can show you what to do as we go. Yes, sir, Edward, Percy whistled gaily as she scampered along in pursuit. Percy was a keen learner, and Edward made for a splendid tutor. In no time at all, Percy knew what she had to do. She marshaled the trucks quickly, much to the blue engine's delight. You're a good learner, he congratulated. Why, you could almost manage without me. That made Percy very excited. Oh, thank you, Edward. But as Percy finished arranging the trucks, Edward backed onto some coaches for Gordon. Coaches required special care and attention, but this was lost on little Percy. Should I shunt the coaches? She whistled. I can manage the yard after all. Edward chuckled kindly. You could almost manage, but not quite yet. Besides, the big engines like things done a certain way, he added quickly, seeing the disappointed look on Percy's face. No engine could learn to keep them quiet so soon. Even I can't keep them content all the time, and I've known them for years. This made Percy feel better, although now she was concerned. These big engines must be giving Edward some grief, she thought. That won't do at all. A short while later, Henry came by hissing as usual. Said Percy suddenly. Henry jumped and ran back to the shed. How beautifully you wheeshed him, laughed Edward. I can't wheesh like that. Oh, said Percy, that's nothing. You should hear them in the workshop. You have to wheesh loudly to make yourself heard. Perhaps you can manage big engines after all, chuckled Edward. You could even teach me a thing or two about them. I could, smiled Percy cheekily. I could tell you all the while you teach me about coaches. The two friends grinned and quickly fell into happy laughter. Bertie the bus loves working around Thomas's branch line. He is friends with all the engines. He has friends on the road too, of course, and one of them is Ruby. Ruby lives at Bertie's depot. She is a bright and bubbly bus, and a familiar face to the village residents. One morning she awoke to find Bertie looking excited. I'm on a special charter today, he explained happily. As I won't be around, would you mind filling in for my slot in the timetable? Ruby was excited. Oh yes, of course, she said. I'd be more than happy, as well as your passengers, I'm sure. Not having to bounce around in you all day, she added cheekily, as she roared eagerly away. She was shortly at the station, where she found Thomas waiting. Good morning, called Thomas. Is Bertie ill today? Oh no, he's away for the day, replied Ruby, so I've come to help. Don't worry, I know you're always perfectly punctual. I can keep the time easily. Thomas was impressed and thoroughly flattered. He puffed away with pride. Ruby rumbled away after him. For the rest of the morning she bounded around, chatting gaily to everyone she met. In the afternoon, she was ambling back towards the village. As she drew up to one of her stops, a surprise greeted her. Hello, smiled Terence warmly. Ruby smiled. She liked Terence. Oh, hello, she tooted. Are you having a nice day? I'm having a lovely one. I'm filling in for Bertie, working with Thomas. It's ever so splendid. Terence couldn't help but chuckle. But before he could reply, a whistle echoed in the distance. Oh, it's Thomas, bubbled Ruby. Sorry, Terence, I shouldn't be chattering. Must keep the time, you know. And Ruby lurched into life. She swerved away, but was too busy looking out for Thomas to appear. Watch out! Cried Terence, but it was too late. Forgetting the curve ahead, Ruby drove straight into the hedge. No one was hurt, but poor Ruby felt foolish. Before long, Terence had pulled her free, and Ruby sheepishly shuffled off again. Her passengers were cross at being late, as was Thomas. So much for being punctual, he huffed. That evening, her manager spoke to her too. If I can't trust you to be sensible, I shall not allow you out again. Poor Ruby felt too upset to reply. She spent the rest of the evening uncharacteristically silent. For the next few days, Ruby set quietly about her work, determined not to make another silly mistake. Though she kept to time, nothing would raise her spirits. Not even Bertie could help cheer her up. Everyone makes mistakes now and again, he told her. I got into trouble for my big race with Thomas, remember? Thank you, Bertie, sighed Ruby as she gave a small smile. But she still felt down. I just wish I could prove I am useful, she thought to herself. One evening, several days later, Ruby was heading for home. She had been on time all day, but she still felt it wasn't enough. But as she neared the tramway, she found quite the commotion. A careless lorry had hit a farmer's cart and spilt its load of stone onto the tram line. The line was blocked, and poor Toby couldn't get past. Botheration, sighed Toby. We're going to be late trying to get the workmen to the junction now. Ruby overheard this, and an idea suddenly struck her. Excuse me, she called. What if I took the workmen for you? I'm sure I can make up any lost time. We wouldn't want to delay the connecting train, or the workmen, of course. Toby was very pleased. Why, thank you, Ruby. It would be a great kindness, cheered Henrietta. The workmen found the proposal very agreeable, and they hurriedly boarded the bus. When all were aboard, Ruby rumbled away. She raced along the road like she had never done before. The workmen clapped and cheered, but Ruby hardly noticed. She knew she had to keep focused. At last, she swerved round the final corner and drew to a stop at the junction, just as James came puffing in. He was very surprised. "We're right on time," cheered Ruby's driver. "You've done very well." Ruby hadn't the energy to reply, but she gave a triumphant smile.
Hello.
When she returned home, the manager was waiting. "I've heard all about your evening and I'm very proud of you," he beamed. "You've proven yourself a most valuable and reliable boss." "Oh, thank you, sir," beamed Ruby happily. Nowadays, Ruby is a bright and bubbly boss once again. She is proud to be useful and knows the importance of being sensible. She feels sure she will never make a silly mistake again. Though I'm sure she'll try hard. I'm not sure that'll last forever, don't you?